Berkembang dengan sangat pesatnya, Sidoarjo menjadi kabupaten rujukan UMKM terbaik di Indonesia. Lalu lalang dan laju masyarakat tak pernah terhenti di sepanjang waktu, mulai dari lini ekonomi, transportasi, budaya, hingga pendidikan tinggi. Dari daerah urban penopang ibu kota provinsi terbesar kedua di Indonesia, Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo melahirkan para cendekiawan muda yang mandiri dan penuh inovasi. Berdiri sejak tahun 1984, berawal dari tergabungnya beberapa sekolah tinggi Muhammadiyah, UMSIDA berkomitmen menjadi perguruan tinggi yang unggul dan inovatif dalam pengembangan ilmu pengetahuan, teknologi, dan seni berdasarkan nilai-nilai Islam untuk kesejahteraan masyarakat. Dari komitmen itu, kami mengedepankan kreativitas dan terus meningkatkan hasanah keilmuan melalui pendidikan dan pengajaran. Umsida tak hanya sebagai tempat menuntut ilmu, namun juga tempat bertemunya ribuan cendekiawan dari seluruh Indonesia, bahkan dunia, untuk bertukar pikiran. Kami saling terhubung dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi dan institusi di dunia, mencetuskan gagasan melalui idealisme para akademisi. Semua itu kami dedikasikan untuk Indonesia, sejahtera dan berkemajuan yang berdaya saing global. Kami bahu-membahu menghasilkan ribuan produk unggulan melalui penelitian dan pengabdian. Dinamika kehidupan kampus ini membuat kami mengerti arti perjuangan.
Umsida akan menjadi perguruan tinggi unggul, inovatif dalam pengembangan ipteks berdasarkan nilai-nilai Islam untuk kesejahteraan masyarakat. Di visi 2038 ini, Umsida akan diantarkan untuk menjadi perguruan tinggi yang mendapatkan pengakuan di tingkat ASEAN Recognition, yang itu meniscayakan ada banyak persiapan yang harus kita lakukan. Dalam tahap ini, 4 tahun pertama kita akan melakukan penguatan pada sisi tata kelola. Maka di situ kita akan memperkuat pendidikan dan pengajaran, penelitian, pengabdian masyarakat, dan sekaligus penguatan nilai-nilai al-Islam dan kemuhammadiyahan. Maka dalam kaitan ini, tugas kami adalah untuk menyiapkan sumber daya manusia, baik dosen maupun tenaga kependidikan, yang profesional, berkompeten di bidangnya, sehingga mereka semua bisa memberikan pelayanan terbaik bagi seluruh sivitas akademika, terutama para mahasiswa. Maka tahapan berikutnya kemudian kita ingin mempercepat capaian national recognition. Pengakuan di tingkat nasional ini yang ditandai dengan berbagai capaian nanti. Secara institusi kita akan mengarahkan Umsida ini terakreditasi unggul, disusul dengan capaian-capaian yang lain, sehingga pada saatnya nanti kita siap untuk bersanding, berkompetisi dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi besar di Indonesia ini. Mudah-mudahan kita semua punya semangat yang sama di dalam mencapai visi besar Umsida 2038 nanti, sehingga kita bersama akan menyaksikan kehadiran Umsida mendapat pengakuan bukan hanya pada sisi kelembagaan, tapi dosen, tenaga kependidikan, sistem pembelajaran, kultur akademik yang terbangun di Umsida ini itu sejajar dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi besar di tingkat ASEAN.
Berbekal nilai-nilai Islam, berserah diri pada Sang Pemilik kehidupan, kami yakin untuk melangkah, melihat ke depan, dunia ada di dalam genggaman. Dari sini perjalananmu dimulai, dari sini pencerahan bersemi. Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Program studi akuntansi Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo mencetak mahasiswa sebagai seorang akuntan yang handal, profesional, dan Islami. Banyak sekali muatan yang akan diperoleh mahasiswa selama menempuh masa studi di program studi akuntansi Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo dalam konteks akuntansi keuangan dan auditing yang didukung dengan laboratorium yang disesuaikan dengan perkembangan ilmu pengetahuan dan teknologi. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya dengan teman-teman di Prodi Ilmu Hukum FBHIS yang dulunya bernama Fakultas Hukum, dengan ini ingin menyampaikan salah satu keunggulan jika teman-teman atau masyarakat bergabung dengan prodi kami memiliki visi untuk menjadi prodi yang terdepan dalam pengembangan atau dalam pencetakan profesional hukum bisnis di tingkat nasional pada tahun 2020. Dan kami di program studi ilmu hukum patut berbangga bahwa dari 6 dosen kami, 4 di antara kami sudah tersertifikasi dan 2 sedang menuju proses sertifikasi. Untuk karakteristik mahasiswa yang islami, alhamdulillah di prodi kami 99% mahasiswa kami sudah berkarakteristik islami, dapat ditemui dengan tidak adanya mahasiswa yang tidak berjilbab di prodi kami. Salah satu misi dari prodi ilmu hukum di FBHIS pada saat ini adalah untuk mencetak sarjana yang kompeten di tingkat nasional. Salah satu penunjangnya adalah melalui praktikum peradilan semu dan melalui praktikum atau melalui lab kontrak. Di praktek peradilan semu, teman-teman akan diperkenalkan dengan banyak hukum acara, antara lain hukum acara perdata, hukum acara pidana, dan hukum acara tata usaha negara, sehingga mereka bisa menjadi praktisi yang handal suatu saat nanti. Baik, jika ingin bergabung dengan kami tunggu di Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo. Bangga Umsida.
pesatnya, Sidoarjo menjadi kabupaten rujukan UMKM terbaik di Indonesia. Lalu lalang dan laju masyarakat tak pernah terhenti di sepanjang waktu, mulai dari lini ekonomi, transportasi, budaya, hingga pendidikan tinggi. Dari daerah urban penopang ibu kota provinsi terbesar kedua di Indonesia, Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo melahirkan para cendekiawan muda yang mandiri dan penuh inovasi. Berdiri sejak tahun 1984, berawal dari tergabungnya beberapa sekolah tinggi Muhammadiyah, UMSIDA berkomitmen menjadi perguruan tinggi yang unggul dan inovatif dalam pengembangan ilmu pengetahuan, teknologi, dan seni berdasarkan nilai-nilai Islam untuk kesejahteraan masyarakat. Dari komitmen itu, kami mengedepankan kreativitas dan terus meningkatkan hasanah keilmuan melalui pendidikan dan pengajaran. UMSIDA tak hanya sebagai tempat menuntut ilmu, namun juga tempat bertemunya ribuan cendekiawan dari seluruh Indonesia, bahkan dunia, untuk bertukar pikiran. Kami saling terhubung dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi dan institusi di dunia, mencetuskan gagasan melalui idealisme para akademisi. Semua itu kami dedikasikan untuk Indonesia, sejahtera dan berkemajuan yang berdaya saing global. Kami bahu-membahu menghasilkan ribuan produk unggulan melalui penelitian dan pengabdian. Dinamika kehidupan kampus ini membuat kami mengerti arti perjuangan.
UMSIDA akan menjadi perguruan tinggi unggul, inovatif dalam pengembangan ipteks berdasarkan nilai-nilai Islam untuk kesejahteraan masyarakat. Divisi 2038 ini, UMSIDA akan diantarkan untuk menjadi perguruan tinggi yang mendapatkan pengakuan di tingkat ASEAN Recognition. Yang itu meniscayakan ada banyak persiapan yang harus kita lakukan. Dalam tahap ini, 4 tahun pertama kita akan melakukan penguatan pada sisi tata kelola. Maka di situ kita akan memperkuat pendidikan dan pengajaran, penelitian, pengabdian masyarakat, dan sekaligus penguatan nilai-nilai al-Islam dan kemuhammadiyahan. Maka dalam kaitan ini, tugas kami adalah untuk menyiapkan sumber daya manusia, baik dosen maupun tenaga kependidikan, yang profesional, berkompeten di bidangnya, sehingga mereka semua bisa memberikan pelayanan terbaik bagi seluruh sivitas akademika, terutama para mahasiswa. Maka tahapan berikutnya kemudian kita ingin mempercepat capaian national recognition. Pengakuan di tingkat nasional ini yang ditandai dengan berbagai capaian nanti. Secara institusi kita akan mengarahkan UMSIDA ini terakreditasi unggul, disusul dengan capaian-capaian yang lain, sehingga pada saatnya nanti kita siap untuk bersanding, berkompetisi dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi besar di Indonesia ini. Mudah-mudahan kita semua punya semangat yang sama di dalam mencapai visi besar UMSIDA 2038 nanti, sehingga kita bersama akan menyaksikan kehadiran UMSIDA mendapat pengakuan bukan hanya pada sisi kelembagaan, tapi dosen, tenaga kependidikan, sistem pembelajaran, kultur akademik yang terbangun di UMSIDA ini itu sejajar dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi besar di tingkat ASEAN.
berbekal nilai-nilai Islam, berserah diri pada Sang Pemilik kehidupan, kami yakin untuk melangkah, melihat ke depan, dunia ada di dalam genggaman. Dari sini perjalananmu dimulai, dari sini pencerahan bersemi. Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang kepada para peserta. Saya ucapkan selamat datang dalam acara Guest Lecture Research in the Age of Social Media. Good afternoon everybody. I would like to welcome all of participants for joining this event. Untuk selanjutnya kita akan mendengarkan sambutan dari Bapak Wakil Rektor 3, Bapak Dr. Eko Hardiansyah. Untuk Bapak Eko dipersilahkan. Untuk Bapak Eko, dipersilahkan. Untuk Bapak Eko dipersilakan memberikan sambutan.
Masya Allah. Sorry. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Innalhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Allahumma shalli ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'du. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Honorable Miss Faniza Almaf. Welcome to Indonesia via Zoom meeting.
It's a pleasure to see everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you virtually.
Okay. the Honorable Dean and Vice Dean, all the source person. We have Nur Mafirah. We have Bapak Toto Wahyu. I hope all of you in health condition, even in pandemic situation. I hope in Australia running well, because in Indonesia it's running bad. I hope this pandemic will finish soon.
I'm very much hoping. We've
Okay. Let me introduce myself, Eko Hardiansyah. I am a Vice Rector of Muhammadiyah University of Sidoarjo. Once more, welcome to Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo. We are in a guest lecture meeting, and I think this is a good event. This is a good activity to enhance our academic culture or academic climate. So I'd like to say thank you to Ms. Paniza Almak for your coming here, and also Mr. Toto. And we have a very beautiful moderator, Miss Poppy.
My Poppy.
The Vice Dean. I think this term is very interesting for this time, which talking about how in the age of this media, social media, I think it's very influenceable. So the social media, even it starts from the United States President Obama in 2005, accordingly. It's very interesting that BlackBerry has a very much influence on how the Obama become the president. Obama doing the campaign by the BlackBerry, but I think 5 years after that, or 10 years after that, BlackBerry is no more. No one using the BlackBerry, and the era changed from BlackBerry to Android and Mac. And I think this word changed rapidly. So even now, the social media become an interesting topic to discuss. And I think Paniza Almak is the expert to talk about the social media and how its impact to the culture, to the politics, to even the mental health, especially for the pandemic situation, in this pandemic situation. And I also want to say thank you to the Faculty of Business, Law, and Social Science for the initiative to do this guest lecture. And I hope all the participants will learn something that better and better, how they know deeper about the social media and its impact. So the third, I want to say sorry, apologize if we have something wrong with our serve to Miss Paniza. So this is my best try to serve you. and I hope you welcome about that.
Thank you. Thank
Maybe
you.
sometime you should try to come to here,
I will
to
definitely.
Indonesia.
It would
And
be.
I think Edith Chuan University should enhance this cooperation by MOU, perhaps, and maybe Ms. Vanessa can help how our institution has a cooperation together, and we can do better than guest lecture, perhaps the joint research, joint publication, or anything that can enhance our educational climate. And perhaps we can do some student exchange or lecturer exchange. That's all I think as the opening mark for me. And thank you for all how this moment initiate. And I hope this activity will run well. Thank you so much for one more. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Success for all.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Eko atas sambutannya. Sebelum acara dimulai, saya akan menyambut keynote speaker kita. Before we start the guest lecture, I would like to welcome Mrs. Paniza Almark PhD from Edith Cowan University Australia and Mr. Dr. Toto Wahyu from University of Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo. Hello Mrs. Paniza, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I feel very honored to speak to everyone.
I would like to hear that. Thank you so much for joining this. Baik, untuk mengawali acara pada siang ini, saya serahkan kepada moderator kita, Ibu Poppy Febriana. Untuk Bu Poppy, dipersilahkan.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First and foremost, I'd like to thank to all the distinguished guests who attend this guest lecture. The Vice President of Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo, Dr. Eko Hardiansa. Assalamualaikum Pak Eko. All head of study program and lecturer from the Faculty of Business, Law and Social Sciences UMSIDA, and also all the participants. I'm feeling very glad today to host the guest lecture, because I think the guest lecture today is very special, because already here joined with us two remarkable speakers. The first one is Professor Paniza Almark from Edith Cowan University, Australia, and the other one is Dr. Toto Wahyu Abadi from Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo. And not only that, why I said it's special, because by the time I post the poster on my WhatsApp story, then I got a lot of direct message from the secret admirer from Professor Paniza. Then what they said, Mbak ikut PO boleh nggak sih gitu ya. They said, please can I join the lecture? Then I think, oh, it's opportunity. And I said, okay, you can join the lecture, but you must follow my Instagram and YouTube account first.
So I use Professor Paniza popularity to gain my popularity also. It's just kidding, yeah. Bapak Ibu, because we need to always feel happy and smile to boost our immune to fight the COVID-19. And I'm sure in Australia also facing the same pandemic. Yeah? And I'm really hope that today's lecture can be our immune booster to anyone who now still stuck with their research, don't know where to start, or don't know how to face or handle the new media, because as we know, the new media giving a lot of challenges for us, the way how we applicate the research to use, choosing the right theory, choosing the right methodology, because so many approaches that now we can use. And also when we are dealing with the pandemic also, actually if we know how, we can use the pandemic as a opportunity to do a new research, just like what Professor Paniza will inform us today. So without waiting any longer, please welcome our first keynote speaker, Professor Paniza Almark, who will be presenting about the new media and pandemic. Prof. Paniza, how are you? It's been so long since the last time we met at Bali, right?
Absolutely. It's been too long, I think. And I look forward to visiting you in Indonesia, hopefully when things get better for all of us.
Yeah, inshallah, we are hoping for that. So maybe I can read a short of curriculum vitae from Professor Paniza. Professor Paniza is Associate Dean of Arts and Humanities at Edith Cowan University, and she is also the coordinator of Media and Cultural Studies. So maybe all the admirers of Prof. Paniza are already waiting, so please you may start the presentation, Professor.
Okay, thank you. I'm just waiting for the PowerPoint.
Okay, let me share the screen.
And I'm just checking if I have control on the PowerPoint.
Can you see the presentation now?
I can see the presentation. Am I able to move the slides, or shall I let you know when to move the slides?
If you want to move the slide, we already shared the co-host with you. You can share the screen and start from your computer. I will stop share if you want to open by your own.
Let's see if this works. I'll just stop that. Oops. Sorry. I'm happy for you to use your PowerPoint if you want to share the screen.
Okay.
I'll just let you know to turn it, because I might.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I will share it from here.
Easy. I'm not worried that I'll lose the. I'll just tell you when it's the next slide.
Okay, yeah, just inform me. Now can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
I can see the PowerPoint, yes.
Yeah.
So I'll just let you know when to change the slide.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. My talk is about new media and the pandemic. I realize this is a very serious situation, and what is interesting is the amount of research that has come out in the last year. So if you could change the slide, please. So there's been a lot of research, a plethora of research on COVID-19, the pandemic since 2020. The use of new media has been vital in terms of communication through isolation. So this is the key term that I'm looking at today in this research, communication through isolation. And we can communicate through new media very simply through our mobile devices, through our laptops. It's very fast and we get an instant response. Could you please change the slide? So we'll change. So there are two key questions. Why is there a rise in the use of new media during the pandemic? And the second question for this research is, what kind of information is being produced during the pandemic? So two key questions. Why is there a rise? And what we need to look at are the challenges experienced. One of the current challenges as we battle the COVID-19 crisis throughout the world is the increased experiential separation emerging as a consequence of social distancing and public health policy of isolation. New media, which I will refer to as social media, provides the opportunity to form connection. This is important in a time of lockdown in which the coronavirus, the COVID-19 restrictions have imposed social distancing. Social media or new media is significant for connecting with others and sharing one's experience. What we find is that, and I quote this, is from research. Is that much of our public knowledge about the pandemic comes via advanced technology through new media that has never been before tested during disaster of this scope and size. So it's very impactful, the research on new media, because we've never experienced it worldwide, and having the new media to communicate what is going on. What is significant in this? The understanding that it provides circumstances where misinformation, urban legends, conspiracy theories can thrive. Okay, next slide, please. So the World Health Organization declared an infodemic, reflecting the concern that audiences were being exposed to an overabundance of both accurate information and misinformation about the coronavirus, making it difficult to determine trustworthy and authentic medical advice. According to the World Health Organization, it causes confusion and risk-taking behaviors that can harm health. It also leads to mistrust in health authorities and undermines the public health response. They also say, with growing digitization and expansion of social media and internet use, information can spread more rapidly. This can quickly fill information voids, but it can also amplify harmful messages. If I go to the next slide now. So what this slide has is the different urban legends spread through new media. And I'm sure you would have heard of some, and you have probably a lot more that are culturally specific. Here are just some kind of misinformation or an urban legend. So false information. One is, COVID-19 is chemical warfare unleashed from a Wuhan lab. And another theory is that someone predicted, a fortune teller, that the pandemic had been about nearly 12 years ago. Another theory that it was a COVID infection turns the patient into a zombie. Another one, holding your breath for 10 seconds can act as a test for COVID-19. And this one is from like that it was predicted in a 1981 novel, The Eyes of Darkness, and it writes of a perfect weapon called Wuhan 400. So this is kind of an uncanny coincidence that someone wrote about something similar, or conspiracy theory back then. Could we have the next slide, please? So other theories, the coronavirus was deliberately created by telecommunication companies in order to keep people at home while their engineers install 5G technology everywhere. And I'll be looking at that in more detail in this lecture. There are other theories of how to prevent the virus, including avoiding spicy food, eating garlic, and drinking bleach. So, and I know in the US, few people have died because they followed that advice of drinking bleach. I don't think anyone's died about avoiding spicy food because I enjoy that. And another misinformation, because the COVID vaccine injects a small piece of biosensing genetic material into our bodies, teaching our cells how to identify the coronavirus and produce antibodies to fight it. And that, could be similar to the vaccine, but this idea is that it will alter our DNA and control our minds. So this is the danger. And in Australia, we have a lot of anti-vaxxers believing that it's unnecessary and that it'll be take control. It's like the government trying to control our minds by through the vaccine. Another false information is pets will spread the disease, and there's some allegation that a dog in Hong Kong had been infected with the virus. And another one, a COVID-19 vaccine will use microchip surveillance technology created by Bill Gates funded research. So there are so many urban legends and myths and conspiracy theories out there. And a lot of new media research on the pandemic is looking into it, the impact of misinformation. And I know there are some researchers at Erlanger looking at this too, which is really important field of research. Next slide, please. So the conspiracy theories and social media. People who believed one or more conspiracy theories regarding COVID-19 were less likely to follow advice to protect their health, such as hand washing and social distancing measures. So this is the impact of all the conspiracy theories. So if you tend to believe that, you're not actually following the correct health guidelines. Another one is people who believed one or more conspiracy theories were more likely to use social media as a source of information rather than traditional media such as newspapers or the radio. And another one is people who used one or more social media platforms to gather information about COVID-19 were more likely to believe in a conspiracy theory. So this is recent research on this, looking at conspiracy theories and social media. And this is done on a case study and looking at it from a survey on the use of social media. Right, now I have the next slide, please. So there's a lot of believing and sharing of misinformation. And it's, whether it's well-intentioned or not, there are odds with the best empirical available evidence. So in other words, by sharing the misinformation, it's not looking at the accurate or the government information, the information that has evidence behind it. And often the misinformation, why it's believed, it's because it's shared by a public figure. and also the research suggests that people who have a greater commitment to political views, like extreme ideology, are more willing to share claims, share the false claims. So this is other research into the sharing of information or sharing of misinformation in the pandemic. So whether it's believed because it comes from a trusted figure, it's quite extreme political views or political ideology. Also, there seems to be a parallel that the more anxious one is, the more that people would share information. So increased anxiety equals increased sharing. So if we please move to the next slide. So, for example, in Australia, Facebook, Twitter, Google, Redbubble, Apple, Adobe, and TikTok signed a new voluntary industry code aimed at combating misinformation and disinformation online. And this is from a news article, but certainly looking at news articles is a way of stimulating further research. TikTok, for example, removed 651 videos mentioning COVID-19 or the coronavirus in a 6-month period for violating policy. A further 222 videos were removed for posting medical misinformation. I also note on my Facebook feeds, any information about the coronavirus, it will actually have some official guideline underneath and sort of health advice. So that is something new in terms of social media and to combat misinformation. And the danger of misinformation is that people's lives are at stake. This is a very serious and deadly situation that we're in. And the fake information, the misinformation, the false information has real impact on people's lives and well-being. TikTok also worked with Agence France Presse to fact-check claims made about COVID-19 and passes on those fact-check claims to the company's moderators. Close to 20,000 Australian videos in that time also has a COVID-19 information label added to them, directing users to health sources. In instances where a video's claim have been reviewed but not yet substantiated, users will get a pop-up warning suggesting not to share the video. Twitter also reported that between July and December last year, 3.5 million accounts globally had actions taken against them for violation of the rules, including 1 million that were suspended. A total of 4.5 million tweets, banners, avatars were removed for violating the rules. There are many accounts being removed, and social media, the actual companies are trying to combat the misinformation, but it is in a very wide scale. And from the previous research, the more anxious people are, the more likely they are to share information. But also, if they have extreme political views, if it's said by someone they trust, a popular figure, or that they tend to believe it. So it's a challenge to combat misinformation. Okay, could we please go to the next slide? So, for example, I'll give you some situations in Australia of false claims. A false claim was regarding the Health Minister Greg Hunt's cellulitis diagnosis was due to receiving the AstraZeneca vaccine. And a false claim that the AstraZeneca vaccine had caused 80% of the members of the Australian Navy severe side effects. So in Australia, there are two vaccines, the Pfizer and AstraZeneca, and AstraZeneca is also produced locally. There's been a lot of hesitation and not many people have volunteered to get the vaccine. So it's been a very slow rollout in people getting the vaccine and making sure everyone's safe. So, and it's probably due to social media that there are false claims made, so people are reluctant of the side effects. That's a major thing in Australia, and that's got a lot of media attention, and the government is trying to combat that with public announcements saying how safe it is, that everyone should get the injection for to help the country. And probably the key example, the first example of someone getting the COVID vaccine is on the next slide. So we'll just get the next slide. This is Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and he posted the photograph of himself getting the Pfizer vaccination. So he was he became one of the first people in Australia to be vaccinated against COVID-19. He shared the photograph on Facebook and he received the shot, and this is, I quote, "in order to give further confidence to Australians that these vaccines are safe and effective." So, but while Australian media outlets, including fact checkers, were blocked from posting to Facebook at the time of Mr. Morrison's post, hundreds on the platforms of the platform users were able to flood the comment section of many of the posts. So this is quite interesting. So this is an official government Facebook page from the Prime Minister. He posted this photograph to encourage others and to give confidence to Australians that the vaccine is safe and effective. So although other Australian media outlets couldn't get onto the post, his followers or people who are following, maybe not his people who liked him, but people who were signed on to his page could make comments. And unfortunately, on the Scott Morrison's page, there were unfounded conspiracy theories and misinformation about the jab. So the most common allegation shared on Prime Minister Morrison's post was that of the orange tip of the hypodermic needle seen directed towards Scott Morrison's arm. So if you have a look, you see the orange tip of the needle. So people were saying that, it's actually got a cap on it. He's not actually getting the vaccine. So one commenter said, you can see the orange cap is still on. And others commented that it's the wrong needle to be used for the vaccine. Now, what's interesting here, just with one simple photograph that was meant to encourage the rest of Australian population to to go and get the vaccine, created sort of hysteria, saying that this is a fake photograph. He's not really getting the needle or not really getting the vaccine. And it's interesting to combat the misinformation or the fake news that, there are official outlets, for example, RMIT University and ABC News. The ABC is the national news media, has this group called Corona Check, and Corona Check fact checks, and their mission is to fact check everything on social media and in the media, and they use their fact checking to combat misinformation. For example, for this photograph, they invited expert opinions. So they got the chair of epidemiology at Deakin University, Catherine Bennett, who kind of provided the scientific advice, saying that the orange section of the needle was not a cap, but the hub that holds the needle. She added that contrary to assertions on Facebook, the needle used on Mr. Morrison would have been an intramuscular needle, and and these are the needles used for the Pfizer vaccine. So it's interesting here where that, government or, special fact checkers need to that have the authority and get the scientific empirical evidence to debunk the false claims. So now I'm going to shift to a slightly different angle at looking at new media and the pandemic. So we've seen these false claims, and it does cause a lot of stress. As I highlighted, the more sharing of news on the pandemic creates greater anxiety. But there's also other ways of sharing that try to alleviate anxiety, and we'll just go to the next slide now. Okay, and this is based on a different form of research, and it takes quite a different angle at looking at the pandemic. For those of you that are interested, this is one of the articles from a special issue of Cultural Studies. There are roughly, I think, about 14 articles on the pandemic. So you can see different types of research. And this one takes a really interesting angle at looking at points. One of the most common has the making of what has come. That creating humor through social media by reinventing or pastiching common songs. So in this article is looking at coronavirus songs and creativity, and they're posted on social media sites such as TikTok and YouTube. And it's also part of what Henry Jenkins have coined participatory culture. So here, in terms of the audience engaging, and this is what is really important about social media and new media, that it's participatory. It's not like traditional media, which is just one way. Participatory culture is that you can engage, you can comment, you can create your own content. So in Christian Fuchs' terms, it's the involvement of users, audiences, consumers, and fans in the creation of culture and content. And it's interesting to look at the study of creativity on social media in both its benevolent, so something positive, and malevolent forms, so something evil, negative. And both of that is growing on social media, leading to the recognition of online spaces as a domain of creativity in its own right. So this goes further than misinformation or just statements that people add onto Facebook, but the creating of content, it is a little bit more sophisticated, and it takes more effort. It's much more engaging. One of the most common responses to the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown have been a feature of almost all countries, and during this time the internet offers a cheap and easily accessible means of distraction. What's interesting is that TikTok, for example, was mainly used by teenagers, but now, during the pandemic, a lot of families, a lot of older people were producing content. And it's quite a specific kind of genre because you only have 15 seconds for a short video. And it offers, you know, something that you can quickly watch, be entertained or question or critique. And then, and people often, in the sense it's participatory, kind of copy that video and do a different style of it. So respond to it by creating their own content. So YouTube videos are different from TikTok in the sense that it normally goes to around 15 minutes, but it can go up to 2 hours. And, you know, and the great thing about both mediums is that in Marshall McLuhan's term, it allows the audience to leave comments, which are displayed below. So it's that participatory nature. So, okay, if we go to the next slide, please. So in this article, Parodies for a Pandemic, Coronavirus Songs, Creativity and Lockdown, there are, you know, songs with new lyrics set to the tunes of established and well-known popular songs. So, you know, common songs or things, and it's interesting that a lot of the songs are older songs from the 1980s and 1990s and early 2000s that are being used and parodied. And by this, the lyrics are changed to comment on the corona or comment on the pandemic or the virus. The new lyrics describe life during the pandemic, the experience of isolation during lockdown, the importance of wearing masks and washing hands, the importance of social distancing when one is out. So in a way, these coronavirus songs, it's not just a parody, but it's also providing community health information. So it's providing a benefit in a humorous, entertaining way. So I'll just show you some examples if we go to the next slide. Okay, if you just click on that. Yep. Okay, let's see if this works. Sound. Is the sound able to be played?
It's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas. Hearts that blow. There's a line to get in. A whole lot more, and you're in pajamas now instead of clothes. Cuff in your elbow, wash your hands, keep 2 meters away from me. Mask. Wear a mask. You can craft one really fast. Tie a scarf around your neck, that's what the CDC is asked. As what you're washing hands. Yeah, you be scrubbing, rubbing, disinfecting. Use the hot water cause it's more effective. Can't forget to get the back of your hands, no. So what you wanna do? What you wanna do? Standing united, strong in the fight. All that now matters is doing what's right to beat it. To beat it.
So yeah, the last one was the Michael Jackson song of the 1980s, Beat It. So as I said, you know, it's a use of popular songs in the kind of Western world and changing the words to create social messages about the importance of wearing masks, washing your hands, social distancing. So we'll just go to the next slide, and this is so if we go to the next slide. Okay. So outside of the United States, there are coronavirus parody songs by performers in Hong Kong, Singapore, the United Kingdom, Canada, and South Africa, among other countries. In Hong Kong, the singer Kathy Mack parodied the Natalie Imbruglia's hit Torn, and the hit Torn was in the 1997 hit in the UK and in Australia. There are other songs such as the Singapore entertainer Alvin Oon parodied Simon and Garfunkel's Sound of Silence with Fight the Virus, so he just changed the words. So there are many other examples instead of Come On Eileen, which is Dexy's Midnight Runners, and that was like in the 1980s. And that song was the melody or the lyrics had changed to COVID-19. So there are many other examples of popular songs and then people redoing the words, revising the lyrics to relate to the pandemic. I'll just show you the next slide. So, okay, and we can just click on that. And this is Kathy Mack.
So I'm kinda scared of being here. There's lots of talking, lots of chatting without protective gear. So all your germs are in the air. During SARS I was just a child. Didn't seem to know, seem to care about the virus running wild. But now I'm freaking out alright. Sterilized, sanitized. My hands are always freaking dry. There's just so many things that I can't touch, I'm torn. How do I use the lift? How do I get the door? Hold on to my legs, 'cause all the drugs go to the floor. When I get the train, I'll stand using my core. 'Cause I don't know who the hell has touched that pole before. I wanna hibernate, I wanna go back home. So then I finally went out on the street. After days of being at home and hiding in my sheet. But then I start to worry 'cause there's nothing left at the grocery store. I can't find bok choy no more. There's just white people things, pasta, cheese, and corn. Where the hell's the rice? Why is it 3 times the price? And when I ask the staff, they say you're chocolate every night. There's dust in my eyes, but if I touch it, I might die. Think the only way to get it out is start to cry. I need to hibernate, I need to go back home.
I think it's got the video now. So you get the idea that various artists, and it's not just artists, but ordinary people too, are making videos that parody, that comment on experiences that a lot of the world is having during the pandemic in terms of going out to the grocery store, touching objects, being out in public, the safety issues. So a lot of the points in terms of the parodies that it creates the active audience. So it's the creation of virtual communities. While new communities may be formed, the appropriation and reworking of music exists in the recording mass medium is inherently subversive, disturbing not only the commercial structure of popular music, but also expanding what music is available and the uses to which popular music can be put. And this is a quote from the author John Strachan, where he discusses how these new communities are formed. So it's not just commercially produced images. In everyday people have the opportunity to create new content and to share content, and so it disrupts the commercial structure. Another theorist, Young, also noted that social media has provided a welcome distraction from the realities of the pandemic and a place to find support. So it's interesting, that it's a distraction, but people are still creating images about what the everyday experience during the pandemic is. So it may be described as used purposefully as a form of self-care in the form of amusing, entertaining, and informative social content. And it also reflects a desire to learn new skills and stay connected during a period of isolation. So when people are staying at home during lockdowns, and at the moment in Perth, Western Australia, we're in a lockdown at the moment where we can't leave our homes. So I'm sure if I went on TikTok or YouTube, there might be new videos being posted of people's experience. So it's a way of coping by addressing our everyday realities, our new everyday realities. So, there seems to be a spike of homegrown content during the isolation and during the pandemic of, where people have the opportunity to learn new skills. I'll just go to the next slide. Sorry. Okay, the next slide. So as I've highlighted, the active audiences offer a new possibility for the creation of virtual communities, where new communities are formed. So we'll go to the next slide. So we've looked at Facebook and some examples on Facebook, and I've looked at discussing some examples from YouTube. TikTok, which I've described a little bit earlier, have also dramatically increased, the user subscribers dramatically increased since the pandemic. And it's a way to keep occupied, but also an opportunity for more creative expression. As I've highlighted, the videos, the content's less than 50 seconds. It also offers new challenges such as dance routines. So if we go to the next slide, and we can watch this. And this is an example of, TikTok dance challenges.
This catchy dance about preventive measures against the coronavirus is spreading, hopefully, faster than the virus itself. A Vietnamese dancer coordinated the moves to go with the song released by Vietnam's Institute of Occupation and Environmental Health. The public service announcement urges people to wash hands and rub evenly. Do not touch eyes, nose, and mouth. Limit visits to crowded places to push the virus away. Rendition dubbed Gen COVID, which is Vietnamese for coronavirus, is sparking a new TikTok dance challenge with the hashtag Gen COVID Challenge. John Oliver compared it to the next best thing since the Rubber Ducky song on Sesame Street.
The song's incredible! It makes all other songs about washing yourself look like trash. I'm talking to you here, Ernie. I want other artists out there innovating. You kept singing the same old ducky song. You lost the hunger, son!
The dancers are asking people participating to perform the 6 hand-washing movements, share and tag 2 friends. The choreographers cited research from MIT that 78% of people say they wash their hands often, but only 25% actually do it after using the bathroom, and only 20% do it before cooking. Simple steps to contain the virus and make it so people find it hard to forget to wash their hands. For InsideEdition.com, I'm Lisa Wojcicki.
So here we see an example of TikTok being, as a community announcement. So it's for the benefit of the community, and the TikTok's dance challenge to go on. You find other people doing the dance, and there were some examples there. And also it has that opportunity for being global as well. It's not just regional. It has that opportunity to spread globally. And I think the benefit of social media at this time is that we get to see what is happening around the world. We get to see different faces, we get to see different experiences. And through TikTok, YouTube, there is that sense of not looking at the serious side of the pandemic, but finding ways to alleviate the stress through humor, entertainment, through performance. So I've discussed YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. Now examine Twitter and Instagram. So we go to the next slide. Now, there's been a lot, probably one of the main conspiracy theories around the world is about 5G and the dangers of 5G. And this is spread very widely via Twitter. And this is one research, and the aim of this research by Ahmed was the aim of the study is to develop an understanding of the drivers of the 5G COVID-19 conspiracy theory and strategies to deal with misinformation. And they undertook a social network analysis and content analysis of Twitter data from a 7-day period in which the hashtag 5G coronavirus was trending on Twitter in the United Kingdom. So if we just move to the next slide. So the study found that there were specific Twitter accounts such as the @5G coronavirus 19 with 383 followers, which was spreading the conspiracy theory and had become influential in driving it forward on social media. And this is kind of interesting that it was just one account that was spreading it, and 383 followers is not very much, but it was enough to make a huge impact. The account was able to send out 303 tweets in 7 days. And it also found that President Trump, or the former President Trump, was often tagged in tweets and was influential within the network without having tweeted himself. So this highlights the point about supporting support for these theories coming from the alt-right, so sort of extremists. So the idea that, also having President Trump in the background there of these tweets gave it more impact. So having a celebrity, a powerful figure, gave it more influence. So if we just go to the next slide. So the combination of quick and targeted interventions oriented to delegitimizes the sources of fake information is key to reducing the impact. And this is more from the research of Ahmed on the use of Twitter. Those users voicing their views against the conspiracy theory, link baiting, or sharing humorous tweets inadvertently raise the profile of the topic, suggesting that policymakers should insist in the efforts of isolating opinions that are based on fake news. So, this was a problem where people thought, well, they'll comment on it, and if they didn't believe it, but to, sharing it humorously, even though they didn't believe in it, actually raised the profile. So it increased its spreading. So, there needs to be ways of how do you isolate fake information or fake news? And maybe it's by not commenting. And I've highlighted earlier how new media, social media, is very much participatory culture. So it does take discipline when you see news that is fake, not to comment or not to share, because it actually just increases its spread. Many social media platforms provide users with the ability to report inappropriate content, which should be used. This study is the first to analyse the 5G conspiracy theory in the context of COVID-19 on Twitter, offering practical guidance to health authorities and how, in the context of the pandemic, rumours may be combated in the future. So if you go to the next slide, please. So using WhatsApp also is another way of spreading false claims. And one of the most widespread false claims is that the pandemic is a grand plan masterminded by Bill Gates. And I commented about this early in this lecture, and it was that Bill Gates is implanting microchips into humans along with the coronavirus vaccine. I'm not sure how this is done, but this is a conspiracy or false claim. And fact checkers in at least 14 countries have debunked local versions of the microchip theory, including in Greece, Kazakhstan, the Philippines, and Mexico. I've highlighted earlier the kind of the influence of new media and social media, that it's beyond, it can go beyond regions. It's not just localized. Information can be spread globally very quickly. And, and so can false claims. Some versions of the theory put their own local spin on it. So this is that localization or globalization of false information. In Arabic, the imaginary microchips were dubbed antichrist chips. And it was, on a YouTube video with over 375,000 views. If we just go to the next slide. So in Brazil, the BBC News Brazil has spotted a version of the microchip theory circulating on WhatsApp and Facebook in Portuguese, and users are copying and pasting a chunk of text which opens with the words, "I have to confess, Bill Gates is really an evil genius. It's easy to control submissive people." So by using those quotes or using that language, it kind of entices people to look at it. But there's absolutely no evidence to prove this. But it's appealing to people who feel vulnerable, who are looking, are overly anxious, and that kind of goes together with feeling very vulnerable. So if we go to the next slide. So new media, information, entertainment, and communication. People have turned to social media for information, entertainment, and communication during the pandemic. For entertainment, it was a welcome distraction and from the severity of lockdown and the realities, the harsh realities, and the impact of the pandemic. So I'm kind of taking a very different look at how we can analyze new media, and not just looking at the serious side of it, but also looking at how we engage with the media and how the public and how we are the public, and that includes myself, we kind of look for lighter stories that kind of are a distraction, that engage with what's happening in the world with the pandemic, but also looking at maybe something that we can turn into positive, that unites people, entertains, and communicates something innovative, creative. So if we go to the next slide, please. So this is an example from Perth, and this person, Ashley Perry, is a dancer, and in Australia, if you've travelled outside Australia, that you have to spend at least 2 weeks in quarantine. So most people are put into a hotel room where they stay there in isolation, and in isolation, you are provided with your meals, and they're presented in brown paper bags. So Ashley Perry, which is the woman in the picture, had spent, was actually on a ship for 60 days at sea and had multiple quarantines, and had seen the effect of the coronavirus amongst the passengers and crew. She finally disembarked in the Netherlands and made the long trip back to Australia. So she went into mandatory quarantine for 2 weeks. And to keep her mind active, she used the paper bags that her food was brought in, the brown paper bags, and created costumes, created a fashion with it. So, which is quite interesting. And she posted it on Twitter, on Instagram, and this kind of spread widely. And I've got a news story also from CNN that picked up the story, and this creativity during lockdown. So she constructed costumes out of paper bags, the paper napkins, the biodegradable containers, and disposable cutlery, and she just created that in the hotel room, and that was her sense of kind of fashion inspiration by recycling what was given to her for her meals. She's titled in this article, Queen of Quarantina. So if we move to the next slide, please. So I'm just going to kind of cover a couple of key points. So the difference with traditional and new media, and we know that traditional media is one way, it's a controlled source, so it's highly edited, and there's this gatekeeping of what information is being conveyed. In opposition, new media or social media, there's interactivity that it's user generated. There are no gatekeepers, although as I've highlighted, the major programs and sources, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube are trying to monitor the sources, but they have to be very quick, and usually it's from complaints made that they can counter or provide other information to correct misinformation. Also with social media, there's multiple influences, and I know this is really important in your region, the influences on social media and the impact they have, their choices, what they say, what they wear, what they buy, how they behave, has a huge impact on the followers. So if we move to the final slide. So social media has become a major conduit during the pandemic as an information source. There is an increased demand for credible news and information quickly. And I have to admit, when I'm looking for news, I quickly go on Facebook and I go to I try to find credible news sites, but it's all via my phone because I can find information quickly. So new media, the appeal of new media is that there's an increased demand. It can also be used as an easy distraction. So when you want to take away from all the very serious news, the tragic news that's constantly in the media, looking at something to distract you and that's innovative can help relieve the stress. So the new media research, so there's a lot of research that I highlighted when I commenced this lecture, that there has been an increased amount of research in the last year, particularly on the pandemic. And various researchers looked at the rise of the virtual community, social connections through creativity, parody, music, fashion, dance. The theorist Miltner argues that in a space of a decade, internet memes have gone from quirky cultural oddities to being ubiquitous, that it's everywhere, and it's been foundational to digital media practice. So the use of humor and the use of memes is become part of the everyday in new media. The research also suggests the creation and circulation of the examples that are provided today, such as memes or music videos, might seem like a minor pastime, but under conditions of lockdown and social isolation, it might be a key component in what makes the difference between psychological and social adjustment and maladjustment. So this is kind of the research into the psychological impact of looking at or circulation, creation of these music videos that I've highlighted. It might be considered a way of coping through the use of humor and creativity, of actually doing something. So not just being passive, but by creating these videos, you're entertaining others. And the arguments that it's using humor's power to unify and create feelings of togetherness. Though as the research has suggested, the closer you are to being affected by the virus, the humor is not enjoyed, and this will just add to stress. There's various news articles and research that have argued that there's a positive effect and that it's valuable in the face of adversity. That positive humor is one means among many for dealing with stress and other negative emotions. And that could be why there are so many humorous or creative ways of presenting or performing in social media. And there's been research on news media articles and headlines. For example, comments such as, "It's a really powerful way to manage the unmanageable, just to make fun of it and to gain control by laughing at it. That's a really powerful psychological move we can make." So, it just goes on looking at that. So importantly, by engaging in it, we can help decrease fear. There's also been research investigating whether and how social media exposure to COVID-19 was associated with various mental health outcomes. And this research is quite interesting. It claims that the more time participants spend on social media accessing news content related to COVID-19, the higher stress levels and depression, there's an increase in stress levels, there's an increase in depression, the more you access news content related to COVID-19. And it suggests that social media has a significant impact on spreading fear and panic. So it's quite interesting to look at not just saying that it's social media, but what is the specific content on social media? How does it approach it? How does it present it as entertaining or humorous rather than serious content? And this kind of study, the studies or research that are being undertaken kind of looks at it from two different angles. For example, I've looked at the article on coronavirus and parodies in the pandemic. And then I've also looked at, which kind of sees it as something positive, but other research on news media sees the amount of news media on the pandemic as something negative to mental health. And the challenge for new media and health information by governments is that you need to communicate effectively, not to distress, but to inform. So that's a challenge. So not to distress, but to inform. And, finally, as I've highlighted in quite a lot in this lecture, is that the rise of the spread of conspiracy theories creates a heightened anxiety. And perhaps, and I'll conclude on this, that the creative content in new media may be a way of alleviating stress, in finding the humor and of the situation. Okay, thank you for your time. Terima kasih.
For the explanation, I think it's very complete from how the conspiracy theories that grows and the spread of misinformation and also all fake information that's in social media. There's also Prof. Vanessa also talking about the increase of anxiety in our society that makes people also more often to share information through social media. Okay, so I think maybe there's already a lot of questions from all the participants here. So anyone who want to ask to Prof. Vanessa, please open the mic or okay, one already raised hand. Haris P. Pamungkas, boleh silakan dinyalakan mic-nya untuk bertanya langsung ke Prof. Vanessa, boleh dalam bahasa Indonesia, nanti saya bantu translate, or in English also fine.
Apakah suara saya udah masuk?
Sorry, suaranya keras. Suaranya pelan, Haris.
Is it loud enough now?
Okay. Yes, please, name and where
Okay.
you come from.
Okay. My name is Haris P. Pamungkas. I'm a freshman. I'm studying communication. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, Vanessa and Bu Poppy. I have a few questions regarding the media. Well, the first is, Professor Vanessa, why do you think people is more susceptible to fake health news, conspiracy theories, myths, and this information that is on the internet rather than the information that has credible sources such as the one from WHO or CDC? And the next thing is, do you think influencers and or content creators should be allowed to post contents containing information regarding the COVID information on social media? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Haris.
Thank you, Haris. Prof. Vanessa, please, you may answer.
Great, thank you, Haris, for the very interesting question. The first one is, why do people go to social media and not go to the official sources such as the World Health Organization or government sites? And I think maybe it's something about the way government sites and produce information or communicate information, because you can get information on social media that is very it's the use of language is very clear and it's very condensed. So if you go to the World Health Organization, you've got to read a long bit of writing. You don't get condensed short information. So I think it's just human nature. When you want information quickly, you go to the quickest source to read. And I know that it is because it's more accessible. So I think the challenge for official organizations in communicating information about the pandemic is to make it accessible for the general public who wants information, put it very simply, very clearly. And unfortunately, the conspiracy theorists tend to do it that way. They have very they spread the information that to make it sound very believable, and they don't, so it's just the strategies, the communication strategies that influence why a lot of the people go, find the false information on through social media. And also, as the research suggests, is the anxiety levels. The more anxious you are, the more you go searching for information. And the spread, and which goes to the second question, is about the social influence. So there is the research that people go to believe and information by public figures or people they respect or admire. So the social influencers have a very important role in communicating information. I'm not sure in terms of social influencers how we, as I've highlighted, the social media, new media doesn't have the gatekeepers that we can't control what they say. And it's often very challenging if they produce false information because it gets to a very wide audience. I hope that has answered your question.
Hello, Haris. How is it? Is it enough?
Yes, thank you so much, Professor.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, I have one
Yep.
more additional question. May I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so like online media platforms such as YouTube, TikTok,
Excuse me,
and
Haris, can you open your
Twitter.
cam so Propanisa can see you?
Excuse me?
Can you open your cam so
I'm
Propanisa?
using a personal computer and
Okay,
it has
no
no
problem. Okay, carry on.
camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so that online media platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter, etc., has this terms of service that, or like a guidelines, community guidelines that can actually control what they post in their content, what information they share through their content. Do you think that this online media platform should be the one who be the gatekeeper to this online content creator? Sorry.
That's a really, thank you for your question. It's a very important thing for content organizations such as Twitter or TikTok or Facebook to have those guidelines, and I think they should be gatekeepers. And this is quite controversial because the idea of new media is that everyone can participate and it's inclusive of different ideas. But when it's harmful to the greater population, my personal view is that there should be guidelines. But we also have a role as individuals that when we see content that is harmful, to do something about it, which is challenging, as I've highlighted in my talk, is that if you share it, you're actually spreading the information further. So do you just ignore it? And what are the strategies to combat it? And I think this is where maybe creating other content, and this is where more formal organizations can produce information to combat false information or misinformation.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Okay. Thank you. So what we must do is take part to not only rely to the platform or maybe the government. So we have to do by our own to stop the misleading information around coronaviruses. I think like that, Professor, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, for next questions. Silakan yang mau bertanya. Mungkin yang mau, oh ini ada lagi satu. Siapa ini ya? Yang raise hand ini tadi masih Haris ya? Atau ada yang lain yang raise hand? Di screen saya nggak kelihatan soalnya. Oh, Dona. Oke, Dona. Silakan bertanya. Yes.
Bahasa Indonesia, bahasa Inggris, Bu.
Apa aja boleh.
Oke. Bahasa Indonesia aja ya. Tadi kan di slide-nya itu bilang kalau sosial media adalah kayak saluran antara informasi dan masyarakat sebagai sumber informasi kan, Bu. Saya mau tanya ke Profesor Paniza, which platform that the most influenced people in OC, especially during this pandemic, either positive or negative impact to the public?
Okay, that's a very good question. I don't have a very simple answer. I think I know Twitter has a huge impact, as well as Facebook. There's still quite a lot of Facebook users, and in Australia, Facebook users are much older. So this is where you get more extreme information, and you get more false claims by older people that maybe are set in their ways or have extremist ideologies. So there are kind of two things, sort of Facebook and Twitter. So the 5G, the impact of 5G certainly going through Facebook and Twitter. The Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, and his photograph, and people were claiming that it was a fake photograph or he was really getting the vaccine. That was on Facebook.
Oke, Twitter dan Facebook, right? Sudah, Bu. Terima kasih. Itu aja keponya.
Oke, terima kasih, Dona. Yang lain, silakan, kita masih ada waktu. Oke, ada Elwanda Rifki. Silakan, Elwanda.
Hello, my name is Al, and I'm from communication. I'm studying communication. I have some question, but it's a little bit distorted. Is that okay? From the material?
Yeah, that's fine. No problem.
Okay. My question is, do you think social media is getting too far right now?
I think it has a very big influence on many people. So I see that as a positive thing because we get information quickly, we can communicate effectively. Whether social media is a bad thing, that's not an easy answer because it's a double-edged sword.
All right. Do you think it's possible to, I don't know, in the future, growing up kids without social media? Do you think it's possible?
I think it would be.
I'm just curious.
Yes, yeah, it's a very good question. So, I think if we had stopped social media for there has been, up till the 21st century, we didn't have social media. We had different forms of media. I don't think it's possible that we can, for the future, not have social media, but we're also looking if we look at examples, for example, Myanmar, where they tried to block Facebook, and that had a huge impact in terms of democracy, of getting information out. So having social media is very much about participatory culture, and it can be used to ensure human rights, to get your story out if there are injustice happening. Whether it's possible to live without social media, it is possible, but I think the way the world is so globalized, it will be very difficult. Because there is a lot of sharing of views.
Right, because I'm so scared with the future, and everybody can be a journalist, but they're without degree, and they're publishing crazy stuff. I don't know. It's so scary, and I'm just scared.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Elle, because the idea of participatory culture on the internet is that anyone can post information, and it's hard to assess whether it's credible, and if you have enough number of followers or influencers, it can spread, misinformation can spread very quickly. So it is quite scary about to find credible sources, and this is where, as working in universities and in education, and is to ensure that the public and we're trained to know where the credible sources are. How do we determine what's fake, what's a fake source, what's a credible source, and actually having digital literacy. So learning digital literacy, and you've highlighted about future young people or children, and I think it's training them, educating them in digital literacy, so being able to determine what is false information and what's a legitimate source of information.
Okay, this is the last, I promise. This is the last question. The last question, okay? You see many influencers from social media, right? Right now. And do you think they can be a good example for people? Right now, much of it?
I think it depends on who it is. Some social influencers can have a positive effect on well-being, where others might have crazy ideas that will be very negative.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the
Too much negative, I see. Okay. Thank you so much for your time to answering my stupid question. So,
they are not good questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Terima kasih, Elwanda. Silakan untuk penanya berikutnya. We are still open for some questions.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to ask you something about vaccine. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. The COVID vaccine is a vaccine that has just been made, which may go wrong. But we are that believe that COVID is really real, right? But we believe that researchers have done their best to make this vaccine to have contributed with in pandemic. But sometimes in Indonesia, here is more people that don't trust about COVID. They think like, no, it's not dangerous. It's okay to not wearing mask or anything. They don't care about themselves and of course with the others. And then how to deal with these people who have a fear of new things of this vaccine? Of course, they don't believe about COVID, and moreover with the vaccine, of course. So we need to have a deal with these people, even in social media and in the real life. So how to deal with these people? Because I think the people that don't trust about this is really dangerous for us, because COVID-19 is really real, but they don't want to trust it because, I think maybe mental health is really important, so don't think about it too much or anything. So they try to not care about it because they think mental health is more important, but they don't think and act like you have to protect yourself first so you can think about your mental health. So how to have to deal with this kind of people and that mindset? That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. It's a very, in Australia, we have the same problem where people don't want to get vaccinated because they don't see it as real. They don't see it as a real threat. And we have been very fortunate in Australia, and especially in Western Australia, where there are very few cases, but at the moment we have 3 cases in the community, and we're in lockdown, so everything's shut and we need to stay at home. So there are a lot of people saying it's an overreaction, but we it's only 3 people, it's not going to affect us. So it is a challenge to communicate to those who don't believe or don't trust, the official. They say it's a conspiracy by the government about the lockdowns and the virus. So that there is an element in society, and I think this is from looking at news media, we know that this is nearly every country or every region facing people who don't believe, regardless, and not looking at the statistics and facts. Now, to combat that, to change attitudes, it's very difficult. So I don't think there is an easy solution. I think this is the challenges for public relations and marketing, to find ways to convince about the realities. And maybe, as I've shown in the lecture, maybe there's ways, rather than looking at more creative ways of influencing or changing attitudes. I'm sorry, I don't have an easy answer for that. It's a very complicated situation, a very challenging one for many.
Okay. Maybe it's quite surprised for me when you explain about how in Australia also dealing the same problem and people didn't trust about the coronaviruses. Maybe because both in Australia and Indonesia also dealing with the same issues, just like how in Australia the Prime Minister tried to fake his vaccine, and also in Indonesia our previous Ministry of Health also at the first time he said that coronavirus is not dangerous, it's just a common flu, just do not need to overreact and something like that. So I agree with Prof. Nisa when you say that it's not an easy question to answer, because it's we need to involve in so many aspects, like maybe the governments need to be more serious in taking care about these issues, and maybe we ourselves can use all the medium that might be used to transform the positive information, just like what you said about how TikTok can also be a positive content that make people want to wash their hands, to dance, something that more easy to duplicate. Okay, for the next question, we already have Nada Hudaya. Silakan Nada.
Yes, ma'am. Maybe I would a little bit give my opinion and answer to help.
Nada dari prodi mana?
Public administration.
Okay, public administration. Okay.
Yes. So talk about the last question that already given. If we talk about the coronavirus, it will be a long discussion, and maybe to answer how we could dealing with the people that not aware with this kind of coronavirus, I think it's like we need a teamwork. So we couldn't finish it and solve it by ourselves, but we can do a teamwork, such as we can ask for government and then the influencer to give education to our people to aware with the coronavirus, because nowadays we know that the coronavirus, it's being terrible in several countries, not just in Indonesia, but also in India and maybe in other countries. So maybe we could answer how we can deal with these people that not aware, and maybe they not take care of their health maybe, but we could ask them to we do a teamwork. We can use the social media nowadays to support, to share the positive way to how to solve the coronavirus itself. So yeah, maybe my opinion is like that. We can do a teamwork with the government and then with the influencer to share the good side to solve the coronavirus itself.
Thank you.
Yes.
Valuable comments.
Okay. Okay, so we have Haris Pamungkes again. Oh, no?
Yeah. Hello. May I add a little?
Please do.
Hello?
Yes.
May I add a little bit?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. About how to combat that mindset of the people who don't believe in COVID. I think that media has a huge role in the first place. Say that these people that has this mindset that COVID don't exist, or that vaccine has like terrible side effects and such, they have this mindset because they are exposed to the information from the media. Say, if there's an article with a headline, say like COVID vaccine will give you blah blah blah, people will more likely be susceptible to this feeling that vaccine is dangerous rather than cross-checking the fact. Because as Professor Panizza said, it's human nature. So I think that media itself, whether it's like news, television, or the more newer one like internet media, has a huge role in, I don't know, like creating this mindset of the people who don't believe in coronavirus. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a challenge to change the mindset, and your comment about the vaccine, and in Australia, one of the vaccines, we have two vaccines, AstraZeneca and Pfizer, and there have been reports, and AstraZeneca was the first vaccine available to some of the population, and there was a lot of hesitancy about getting the vaccine because there were very few people had developed blood clots. Statistically, it was a very low proportion of people who had blood clots from the vaccine, but it created this fear amongst the population, and now they've stopped it, and they're offering the Pfizer vaccine. But although the science is not behind that, but they just want people to get vaccinated. So this fear, of rumors and things being exaggerated, because it is also the unknown, because we're getting bombarded with so much information, and sometimes the negative things builds on that anxiety and fear that if we're okay, why do we need to get something that may cause us harm? So I think in terms of public information, and we've had some really important comments today from the audience in how we all need to work together, the government, social influencers, and as individuals to combat the negative or misinformation. I don't know if I...
Okay.
And for that, if you want me to respond in it more clearly, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Panizza. Thank you for Nada and also Haris for the comment. I think it's a very precious one. And at the column chat, we already have one question from Erika. Hello, Mrs. Panizza. I would like to ask a question. How we reduce fake news from media when the news is spreading faster and it reaches people quickly? Sometimes the news look so real, and so we will accidentally believe it. How to deal with that, Professor?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Erica. With and it is here we are dealing with human nature. That when we live such in, especially the 21st century, want things so quickly. We want everything fast, and we want news fast, and so we the spreading of misinformation can happen accidentally because we read it and we if it's presented in a way that seems credible, we want to believe it. This is where the digital literacy, that training goes in. And I know I've often had to stop myself where I see something and think, oh, that must be true. And then I have to kind of take a moment to actually look at another source, search it a bit further to see, are there multiple sources saying this? And this is the danger in social media as well, because they could be multiple sources spreading the same false information. We are living in very challenging times in terms of communication. So to answer, how do we reduce fake news from the media? There isn't a simple answer, but I think it's how we respond to it. So, rather than when we get news, we don't share it immediately. We take a moment and maybe cross-check with other sources, and if there's an official government source or official organization, World Health Organization or something, a legitimate source, to actually cross-check that information. So it's probably changing the way our lifestyles, how we just slow it down, which it's not easy.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Nisa. We still have about 10 minutes, maybe one last questions. Before we close this session. Anyone maybe still want to know about how we dealing with the coronavirus and also new media, how it spreads so quickly through new media, all kind of information from the positive one to the negative one.
Well, I have a question for the audience.
Okay.
I've given Australian examples and information that I'm aware of, but I'd be interested to hear what kind of conspiracy theories, what kind of misinformation is being spread in social media in your region.
Okay. You ask to me or to all the participants?
Anyone.
Anyone. Okay. Silakan yang mau sharing mungkin apa misleading information yang biasanya ada mungkin di antara teman-teman generasi milenial ini. Silakan yang mau sharing. Okay, while waiting for the participant to share their information, maybe I can tell you a little bit about what we trying to face here, especially about the misinformation. Actually, it's almost the same. There's also a lot of misinformation, especially in social media. In Indonesia, mostly it spreads through WhatsApp. And the issues is many from conspiracy theory, like what we said. We also dealing with that because most of people, when the government say that you have to wear mask, then they start thinking like, oh, this kind of conspiracy because when we are buying a mask, it's made from China, so it makes China more wealthier, something like that. And also the debate about the vaccine itself, about the Sinovac, AstraZeneca. Many media also blow up about the people who, after they do the AstraZeneca vaccine, they have a blood clot, like just like what you say, something like that. And at the first period of the coronavirus hitting Indonesia, most of people think that our government is too slow in taking action in handling this kind of pandemic. So, like what I said before, our previous health minister also said that it's not something that we need to worry about. It's just common things. And then many people in Bali also, because Bali is the place that most suffering. If you still remember the hotel when we go to Bali last time, it's already closed. And when you see the Kuta, it's no longer like what you see last time. It's very many businesses closed there. So what they do, some of the government try to pull more tourists to go there and say, oh, it's okay, you please come to Bali and everything. But actually they're not ready when the pandemic is hitting. So now in the second wave, we are very suffering. And Bali is the place where the most suffering from the pandemic.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I can see with the impact of lack of tourism, the businesses, it has a huge impact on when people can't travel, and impact on everyday lives, on how do you live, how do you support yourself when you can't earn an income because you know, of the pandemic, the lack of travel, it's not safe.
But there's also positive things. I remember some content, and especially in Instagram, because I'm not a TikTok user. I just spying TikTok because I think like I'm 3 decades too old to do the TikTok content. So I'm just spying on it. When we see about the Instagram content in Indonesia during pandemic, there's a lot of interesting things. Just like maybe now you see more influencer in Indonesia doing something like makeup during pandemic. Pajamas now is like more stylish. They make it more stylish, so they make like a fashion during pandemic. And a lot of interesting content also in YouTube, just like what you mentioned before.
More creative.
More creative. Okay, Professor Vanessa, I think we already at the end of our discussions. It's very interesting to hear what you already explained to us, how actually new media and also the pandemic, if we can see it deeper, then we can see that there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of things that we can do from the researchers' side. For example, there's a lot of research examples, just like how we combine conspiracy theories to see some issues that's spreading in our society, and also we can use kind of SNA or content analysis to see how the information is spreading throughout the social media. And for the netizen, buat para netizen, I think the pandemics also give us challenge for the government, also for all the influencers, that we now need to communicate effectively, not to distress but to inform, just like what Professor Vanessa said, and I'm really agree for that. And maybe from now on, all the participants here can use their new media, their social media, to spread out all the positive information, so we can decrease all the negative issues out there, because we cannot rely it to the government itself or to the content, to the platform owners, but we have to do it by our own. So stop sharing all fake informations, because by sharing it means that we are increasing its popularity. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Vanessa. It's very interesting to have you here It's an honor also for us to have you here. Maybe next time we can meet in person.
I do hope so, so we can see.
Ya, thank you. Baik, buat semua partisipan yang masih bergabung di sini, we will move to our second dose of what I can say, immune booster. With our second keynote speaker, Dr. Toto Wahyu Abadi. Assalamualaikum Pak Toto, already joined with us.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, let me introduce a little bit about Dr. Toto Wahyu Abadi. Dr. Toto Wahyu Abadi is a lecturer from communication study programs and is very good in doing research, have so many Scopus articles, so anyone who wants to follow Dr. Toto research, just simply type his name, then you will find a lot of Pak Toto research that's already published either in Scopus or in Sinta journals. So Pak Toto today he will bring the topic is about the meaning of methodology in research. As we know, the methodology is the key when we want to do a good research. And without waiting further longer, Pak Toto, please.
Hey, terima kasih. Thank you, Bu Poppy.
Saya yang share screen-nya atau Pak Toto?
Kalau yang share Bu Poppy saja ya.
Oke.
Kayaknya agak susah ini.
Oke Pak. Saya cari dulu. Sudah kelihatan Pak Toto?
Oke, sudah kelihatan. Thanks very much, Miss Poppy, for chance to me. The Honorable keynote speech, Dr. Vanessa Almak from Edith Cowan University, Perth, Australia. Tampak ramai sekali pada sore hari ini. Bahasan terkait dengan media sosial. Honorable ladies and gentlemen of participant guest lecture, Faculty of Business, Law and Social Science. I'd like to explain the meaning of methodology in research. Next. There are three things that must be considered by novice research in understanding the importance of research methodology. First, philosophical foundation, operation, and research concept. Philosophically, a research methodology can be used to understand fundamentally the two poles of the opposite and rigid tradition, namely quantitative and qualitative. Operational, it can be the basis for conducting research to avoid methodological confusion. And the most important thing is an understanding of the research concept itself. The definition of research as data collection can provide an understanding to research that the quantitative and qualitative ones are actually the data. The nature of the data that can then determine how a researcher to get it. Next. Why appear quantitative or qualitative methods? The emergence of these two methods is due to difference in thinking about social reality. What is reality? Reality, everything that is presumed to exist. The word presumed has an important position because it reflects the existence of relativity. That is, what is considered existent by one person is not necessarily existent for another. This is what then underlies the different ideas about existence itself. Existence does not have to be empirical or can be known throughout the five senses, but can also be something presumed to exist without having to experience it empirically. The third can also be presumed to exist, cogito ergo sum. Jadi cogito ergo sum, saya berpikir saya ada. Apakah saya berpikir saya ada itu termasuk dari realitas sosial? Bisa jadi seperti itu, ya. Kita ikuti selanjutnya. That is someone who's masih ya itu. That is someone whose thoughts are reasonable and can be accepted by others. It can be said that person exists. In short, there is something that exists in the world, the universe, but empirically and in the human mind. Next. Karenanya di dalam apa yang terkait dengan realitas sosial itu kemudian para pemikir atau tokoh-tokoh yang memikirkan yang terkait dengan realitas sosial, para tokoh peneliti itu terpecah dalam 3 paradigma. Oleh karenanya disebut dengan trikotomi Newman. Trikotomi Newman ini ada 3, positivism social science. Positivism social science ini developed by Comte. Jadi positivisme ini, positivism social science ini dikembangkan oleh Comte, John Stuart Mill, di mana realitas menurut positivism social science, reality is in reality and works according to natural law and cannot change. Positivistic required to use quantitative data, experimental methods, surveys, and statistics. Interpretative social science paradigm, interpretative social science, developed Max Weber, Wilhelm Dilthey. Social reality is the result of human interaction and its changes following the situation. Analysis of hermeneutic. Example yang termasuk dalam kajian interpretatif social science diantaranya adalah analysis of hermeneutic, etnometodologi, fenomenologi, subjectivistic, qualitative sociology, symbolic interaction symbolic, and the sociology of the Chicago School. 3 paradigm critical social science, developed Karl Marx, Adorno, Erich Fromm, and Herbert Marcuse. Social reality, according critical social science, is in a conflict situation because of hidden structures. Example yang termasuk dalam critical social science diantaranya adalah teori konflik, analisis feminis, teori radikal, psikoterapi. Next. Dari tiga paradigma itu sesungguhnya, yang masih menjadi perbincangan hangat di dalam metode penelitian, tiga paradigma itu secara keseluruhan itu bisa dibagi menjadi dua, dikelompokkan menjadi dua. Pertama, qualitative methods and quantitative methods. Yeah. Quantitative methods using the hypothesis that was determined from the beginning of the study. A clear definition stated from the start. Reduce data to numbers. More attention to the reliability of scores obtained through research instrument. Validity assessment using various procedures, varying and statistical calculation. Validity assessment using various procedures, varying on statistical calculation. Use clear, detailed procedure description. Jadi prosedurnya, deskripsi prosedurnya itu sangat-sangat jelas begitu ya. Kemudian teknik sampling yang digunakan adalah sampling random sampling. Ini yang selalu salah digunakan oleh mahasiswa begitu ya. Ya. Kalau kualitatif method itu sampling purposive. Qualitative methods. The hypothesis is developed in line with the research, current research. Definitions according to the context of time of the research. Narrative description, words, expression or statement. Prefer to assume enough with inference reliability. Validity assessment through cross-checking of information source. Theories can be causal or non-causal and inductive, using procedure description narratively. Tadi kalau quantitative method, teknik sampling yang digunakan adalah sampling random. Lah, yang qualitative method itu adalah sampling purposive sampling. Ya. Next. Quantitative methods selalu menggunakan statistical design of control over external variable. Qualitative method using logical analysis in controlling external variables. Using quantitative method, using special designs to control procedural bias, analyze and conclude the results using statistics to show the relationship with the hypothesis. Masih yang kuantitatif, breaking the symptoms into parts to be analyzed. Manipulating aspect, situation, or condition in studying complex phenomena. Qualitative methods, selain using logical analysis in controlling external variable, juga relying on research to control bias. Concluding the results narratively in words to provide a coherent and consistent picture. The symptoms that appear are seen in the overall perspective. Does not destroy the symptoms that occur naturally leave the original state. Next. Dari tiga paradigma yang kemudian menjadi secara umum dipisahkan dikelompokkan menjadi dua paradigma, yaitu yang dua metode atau paradigma tadi itu yang kuanti dan yang kualitatif. Di dalam perkembangannya, tiga paradigma penelitian trikotomi dari Newman itu ada perkembangan yang terkait dengan apa itu, ada aliran-aliran lain yang kemudian itu muncullah feminisme social research dan postmodern social research. Ya. Feminisme social research ataupun postmodernism social research ini masih kualitatif gitu ya. Jarang ada yang kuantitatif. Meskipun ada yang kuantitatif, terutama yang feminisme social research, itu kecil sekali. Ya. Kalau yang postmodern ini, social research ini memang bagian dari yang kualitatif begitu ya. Oleh karenanya, kita simak masing-masing karakteristik dari feminisme social research. Feminisme, advocacy of feminist value and perspective. Reject, exist, assumptions, concept, and research questions. Kalau kemarin ada pertanyaan yang terkait dengan KPK begitu ya, pertanyaan-pertanyaan terhadap pegawai KPK yang perempuan-perempuan itu, yaitu yang sangat seksis gitu ya. Di dalam tradisi dalam feminisme social research itu suatu hal yang tabu. Misalnya pertanyaan yang kemarin KPK itu pertanyaan-pertanyaan seksis. Why are you not married at this age? Do you still have desire? Do you want to be my second wife? What if you are dating dan lain-lain gitu. Itu contoh pertanyaan yang seksis begitu ya.
Orang jam mari.
Establishing and empathetic relationships between the research and those being studied, both men and women. For sensitive to how the relationship between gender and power in the realm social life. Postmodern social research reject all ideologies and organized belief system, including social theories. Thus, in intuition, imagination, individual experience, and emotions. Postmodern social research in significance and pessimism, and believing that the world will never progress. Extreme subjectivity where there is no distinction between the mental and external worlds. Next. Karakteristik yang kelima dari feminisme social research, incorporation between feeling and experience of researchers in the research process, flexibility in the choice of research techniques, and other limitations in the academic world. We consider the beneficial emotions and dimensions of dependence in human experience. Action-oriented research that seeks to facilitate change in individuals and society. Postmodernism social science, a very relative interpretation, no limits, tanpa batas, superior to others, supports difference, chaos, complexity that stay with change, refuse to learn from the past or different faiths, science, only the here and now is relevant. Believing that causality cannot be learned because life is complex and changes repeatedly. Strictly state that research can never explain what really happens in the social world. Next. Ini penutup ini. Karena tadi sudah banyak, maka saya nggak perlu banyak-banyak. Banyak nanti di diskusi atau di mata kuliah. Closing. One approach that can be used to end the long and endless debate in both quantitative and qualitative research tradition is the mixed methods approach. Kemarin sudah dijelaskan bagaimana tradisi pendekatan mixed methods ya kemarin. The mixed methods approach is a relatively new approach to research methodology. Even though it is new, its appearance is no stranger to academics in Indonesia. The use of this measurement paradigm can identify and combine quantitatively and qualitatively in a complementary way, without having to have a paradigm war. Everything has been completed, and its use can be together all sequentially. Jadi paradigma kuantitatif dan kualitatif yang sampai saat ini itu menjadi bahan perdebatan, apakah kuantitatif, kualitatif itu yang paling baik. Ada yang mengatakan bahwa kuantitatif itu adalah yang paling baik, kualitatif adalah yang paling baik. Nah, saat ini sudah harus diakhiri. Bahkan ada yang mengatakan bahwa paradigma yang baru, gitu ya, paradigma yang baru yang saat ini muncul sebagai bagian dari tradisi penelitian, ya, itu muncul seperti mixed method. Ada yang menganggap bahwa mixed method itu adalah sebuah metode penelitian banci begitu ya, tapi sesungguhnya tidak ya. Jadi semua adalah seperti rel kereta api. Seperti rel kereta api, kalau rel kereta api itu kan ada dua, jadi yang satu kuantitatif, yang satu kualitatif, maka dalam mixed method itu bisa berjalan berbarengan ya. Saya tidak bisa membayangkan kalau misalnya orang itu punya satu kaki, kalau Anda punya satu kaki, itu jalannya akan pincang begitu ya. Nah, itu harus diakhiri perang paradigma antara kuantitatif dan kualitatif. Oleh karenanya, kalau misalnya di antara mahasiswa itu nanti atau di antara peneliti-peneliti itu kok bingung mana yang paling baik, mana yang paling bagus di antara dua metodologi penelitian, ya pilih saja. Kalau misalnya Anda kok mampu melakukan penelitian-penelitian yang terkait dengan mixed method, monggo silakan. Cuman kalau penelitian mixed method itu memang agak lama begitu ya. Kalau dalam masa komunikasi mungkin lama itu biasa, tapi kalau masa yang lain itu mungkin luar biasa. Itu yang bisa saya sampaikan. Terima kasih. Terima kasih Bu Popi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much Pak Toto for the explanation about the research method. I think we all are struggling with research method, especially sekarang yang lagi skripsi gitu ya. Okay, maybe we can start with the session of question and answer. Already have one question here, one participant. Ibu Dr. Rita Ambarwati, silakan Bu.
Silakan Bu Dokter. Pakai bahasa Indonesia Bu Dokter ya.
Oh, di mute. Coba saya unmute. Sudah Bu Rita?
Nggih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Mohon izin kami tidak pakai kamera Ibu Popi, Pak Dok, Pak Toto, punten. Cuman saya ingin bertanya sedikit Pak, karena kami newbie untuk di komunikasi kebetulan. Kemarin ada riset yang kolaborasi tentang komunikasi. Nah, kami itu menggunakan metode social network analysis atau yang menggunakan semantik gitu ya Pak ya. Semantik network analysis itu. Nah, ngapunten Pak, saya masih newbie soalnya pengen tahu lebih dalam terkait penelitian di komunikasi. Untuk pengumpulan datanya memang kami menggunakan kualitatif dengan persepsi dari kata-kata Twitter atau dari gambar. Nah, yang kami pakai kebetulan kata-kata. Tetapi dalam pengolahan datanya itu banyak menggunakan algoritma. Nah, ini yang saya bingung. Saya harus menetapkan itu kualitatif or kuantitatif. Karena pada beberapa begawan itu juga saya tanyakan gitu. At least saya belum menemukan jawaban yang pas. Mungkin kalau yang diekspor di communication research mungkin lebih bisa menjelaskan. Matur nuwun Pak Toto ngapunten. Nggih, Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Masih dijawab Popi?
Monggo Pak.
Ya, terima kasih Bu Rita atas pertanyaan yang sangat bagus sekali. Semantik atau semiotik Bu ya. Kalau dalam ini saya pakai bahasa Indonesia saja ya. Izin pakai bahasa Indonesia saja biar lebih berekspresi lebih luas begitu ya. Jadi di dalam penelitian yang mixed methods memang kalau yang terkait dengan algoritma saya memang belum banyak tahu begitu ya. Tetapi yang terkait dengan penelitian-penelitian yang sudah yang terkait dengan seperti tanda atau gambar itu biasanya menggunakan semiotik ya, semiotik. Kalau yang semiotik memang semiotik itu ada beberapa aliran, ada beberapa teori. Satu di antaranya adalah misalnya teorinya semiotiknya Halliday tentang semiotik sosial. Kemudian ada Charles Sanders Peirce dan yang lain-lain. Nah, di situ di semiotik Charles Sanders Peirce itu ada tanda, kemudian ada ada tanda, ada ikon, ada indeks ya. Itu kalau yang di Charles Sanders Peirce. Memang penelitian-penelitian yang terkait dengan yang terkait dengan kata-kata itu memang harus harus matang semiotiknya. Selama ini kadang teman-teman yang melakukan penelitian-penelitian dan yang pernah saya review di jurnal artikel internasional itu mereka menggunakan semiotik tapi semiotiknya tidak jelas ya. Ada yang menggunakan dan itu belum clear sekali begitu ya semiotik, dan mereka tidak paham bagaimana penggunaan kata, kalimat, kemudian frasa dan klausa-klausa itu harus diartikan. Di dalam semiotik yang apalagi yang punyanya Ferdinand de Saussure itu ada semantik, kemudian ada paradigmatik ya, dan itu sangat-sangat beda gitu ya. Jadi bagaimana susunan semantik, kemudian sintaksis, kemudian paradigmatik, masing-masing itu ketika disusun kalimat-kalimatnya tentu akan menghasilkan makna yang berbeda gitu ya. Itu dalam semantik. Ya. Oleh karenanya di dalam penelitian-penelitian seperti itu, mana yang mau kalau ketika menggunakan mixed method, mana yang mau mau ditonjolkan terlebih dahulu. Kalau yang mau ditonjolkan itu yang masalah semantiknya, maka semantik itu ya harus yang kualitatifnya itu, maka itu yang akan harus diberi proporsi yang cukup besar. Kemudian sementara yang terkait dengan algoritma itu mungkin yang lebih kecil. Saya nggak tahu sendiri. Saya selama ini belum pernah melakukan yang terkait dengan yang algoritma itu tadi, Bu Rita. Seperti itu. Mungkin jawabannya saya kurang memuaskan begitu ya.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Toto, Bu Rita. Mungkin ada tanggapan? Sudah cukup atau mungkin perlu penjelasan? Kok di-mute lagi? Sebentar. Oke.
Ibu, matur nuwun. Nanti mungkin kami teruskan untuk dialog lebih lanjutnya, karena saya baru tahu ada ilmunya ternyata di komunikasi untuk menafsirkan tersendiri tentang semantik itu. Oke, matur nuwun sangat Pak Toto insight-nya. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Ibu Dr. Rita Ambarwati. For next questions. Para fans Pak Toto, silakan yang sedang berjibaku dengan skripsi, tugas mata kuliah saya, ada jurnal, mungkin mau konsultasi sama Pak Toto, silakan. Oke, Pak Toto sambil
ada yang mau tanya, ada mungkin berakhir.
Jangan Pak. Oke, while waiting, maybe I will ask a question Pak Toto. Tadi menarik waktu Pak Toto cerita bagaimana kita ini dibagi menjadi dua paradigma penelitian, kuantitatif, kualitatif secara metodologi ya, walaupun sekarang ada namanya mixed method. Tapi ini saya cerita sedikit kegelisahan saya di kampus Pak. Jadi beberapa kali saya lihat ada teman yang melakukan penelitian, selalu yang ditanyakan adalah korelasi antara paradigma teori yang dipilih dengan metodologi. Nah, kaitannya dengan mixed method itu tadi Pak. Bagaimana caranya kita memilih teori itu? Kalau kita misalnya sudah milih yang teori-teori dalam ranah positivistik, apakah bisa nanti dibawa ke mixed method, ataukah memang mungkin teori dari dua alam ini antara positivistik dan non positivistik ini digabungkan supaya kita bisa melakukan mixed method?
Ya, terima kasih Bu Popi. Selama ini yang terjadi memang kayak seperti teori-teori interaksionisme simbolik begitu ya, teori interaksionisme simbolik. Apakah bisa teori interaksionisme simbolik ini bisa dikuantitatifkan? Padahal itu adalah teori-teori yang notabene adalah kualitatif. Kemudian atau mungkin yang kuantitatif itu teori-teori yang sifatnya kuantitatif seperti teori-teori agenda setting atau mungkin teori-teori yang lain, itu apakah kemudian bisa yang kuantitatif dalam tradisi kuantitatif kemudian itu bisa dikualitatifkan? Di dalam mixed method itu tidak ada yang tidak mungkin, semua memungkinkan ya. Perkaranya mau menerima ataukah tidak di antara peneliti dan para pembimbing itu sendiri. Saya pikir seperti itu, nggak ada masalah. Jadi teori-teori itu kan misalnya ada teori-teori yang nggak bisa dikuantitatifkan, ya jalan saja sendiri. Tetap itu harus seiring sejalan dalam melakukan kajian. Ya. Saya pikir seperti itu Bu Popi.
Baik, terima kasih banyak Pak Toto. Mungkin saya harus bimbingan disertasi ke Pak Toto juga. Oke, for next question.
Kualitatif aja sampai niku.
Iya Pak, kualitatif. Nyel.
Ya, kayak Pak Ferry itu postmodern, penelitian tentang kebudayaan, tapi dibawa ke ranah komunikasi.
Iya baik. Silakan mungkin Pak Ferry ada yang mau didiskusikan dengan Pak Toto, proposal penelitian disertasinya mungkin. Silakan yang lain mungkin. Buat semua yang ada di sini sambil menunggu Pak Ferry menyiapkan pertanyaan, saya mau mengingatkan supaya mengisi Google Form yang sudah di-share di grup chat, ada absensi dan juga ada feedback. Jadi ke depan kita bisa memperbaiki lagi event kita berikutnya, karena mudah-mudahan ini akan jadi kegiatan yang rutin dilakukan oleh FBIS. Admin mungkin bisa dibantu untuk unmute karena saya tidak bisa meng-unmute Pak Ferry. Oh bisa.
Baik. Saya ingin bertanya ke Abah Tata.
Enggak Pak Ferry.
Oke. Ya, saya harus banyak belajar juga kepada Pak Toto di bidang penelitian. Cuman saya masih bingung untuk mixed method itu, apakah dia hanya metodenya begini Pak. Ini kan menyangkut paradigma kalau kita meneliti. Apakah ini kuantitatif, kualitatif, itu kan nanti ontologis, epistemologis, dan aksiologisnya kan harus juga nyambung Pak. Apakah mixed method ini paradigma yang baru sendiri atau memang hanya untuk kasus? Misalnya sebenarnya penelitian saya ini kuantitatif, tetapi butuh pendalaman data wawancara misalnya, sehingga bisa dikatakan mixed method begitu. Ataukah tetap penelitian saya ini harusnya kuantitatif, hanya untuk data tertentu saja saya menggunakan wawancara, atau sebaliknya mungkin saya kualitatif, hanya untuk data tertentu saja saya menggunakan survei. Begitu Pak Toto.
Lah, baik, terima kasih Pak Ferry, yang pertanyaan bagus ya. Lah, tentu yang terkait dengan ini peneliti yang paling tahu apakah dia yang mau melakukan yang kualitatif atau sebenarnya di dalam kualitatif itu tidak terlepas dari yang tidak nyol-nyol kualitatif sebenarnya ya, enggak ya. Misalnya yang terkait dengan misalnya peneliti ingin mengetahui bagaimana itu karakteristik responden ya dari dari persentase atau itu ya, statistik yang deskriptifnya yang statistik itu tidak ada masalah sebenarnya. Itu hanya sekedar sebagai semacam semacam bumbu-bumbu saja. Jadi yang namanya kualitatif tidak harus nyol, yang namanya berbicara tentang karakteristik penduduk suatu desa, misalnya agama Islam berapa, itu bukan berarti itu ada kuantitatifnya, atau mungkin ada yang ada kaitannya dengan statistik angka-angka, itu tidak harus itu namanya kuantitatif, tapi kualitatif juga bisa itu namanya. Jadi kalau misalnya Pak Ferry ingin mengetahui bagaimana sebenarnya karakteristik misalnya daerah di pantai timur Sidoarjo itu, ya tidak harus ya kualitatif ya, tapi untuk data-data pendukung seperti angka-angka itu juga hanya sekedar melengkapi saja gitu. Makanya yang didesain itu kualitatifnya yang ditonjolkan dulu, atau yang kuantitatif itu hanya sebagai pendukung saja, atau antara kualitatif dan kuantitatif sama-sama jalannya, atau yang kuantitatif itu didahulukan, ya, kemudian didukung data-data kualitatif juga boleh. Dalam penelitian saya misalnya, saya memang kuantitatif. Ketika ada temuan yang sangat janggal dari kuantitatif itu untuk membunyikan bagaimana kok terjadi tidak ada hubungan atau apa, nah itu perlu digali lebih mendalam terkait dengan kualitatif. Ya, makanya penelitian saya itu 2 tahun nggak mari-mari, khusus penelitian saja. Jadi kuantitatifnya setahun, kualitatifnya yang terkait dengan wawancara, karena ada data yang nggak match gitu ya. Kenapa ini data tidak match? Maka harus digali melalui wawancara. Bisa jadi ketika misalnya Pak Ferry di dalam tradisi kualitatifnya itu kok sudah ada yang tidak terpenuhi misalnya, itu bisa kuantitatif, itu bisa dipakai untuk sebagai penopang. Dan itu harus didesain terlebih dahulu sejak ketika seorang peneliti itu mau meneliti terkait dengan fenomena yang ada itu. Saya pikir seperti itu Pak Ferry. Ya. Nah kalau Bu Popi itu kan sinyal-sinyal kualitatif. Kalau kuantitatif kan ya. Kalau kuantitatif mungkin wah Bu Popi ini ya agak-agak bingung juga dengan angka-angka ya.
Langsung
kalau
saya serahkan
Bu Popi
pada
kualitatif
ahlinya,
itu jagonya itu. Apalagi kalau analisis naratif begitu ya. Gitu. Saya pikir itu Pak Ferry.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Toto, Pak Ferry. Saya memang kualitatifnya kalau sudah kena angka-angka saya hanya menghitung angka-angka yang ada di rekening saja gitu ya. Kalau kuantitatif saya serahkan pada ahlinya. Oke, kita masih ada waktu, mungkin ada pertanyaan lagi. Saya ingatkan sekali lagi di form di chat itu ada 3 form that all of the participants have to fill, because those who will get the e-certificate is only those who fill those 3 form. So the first one is absent from the first session, and then feedback form, and also absent for second session. So don't forget to fill the 3 form. Silakan yang mau bertanya. Iya, Bu Fira mau tanya apa? Saya melihat gerakan di balik maskernya, sepertinya Bu Fira mau bertanya sesuatu. Silakan Umi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Sehat-sehat ya Pak Toto nih.
Alhamdulillah.
Yang pertama saya mohon dukungannya dan bantuannya karena habis ini S3. Jadi jangan kaget kalau banyak tanya tentang penelitian ya Pak Toto ya, termasuk publish jurnal-jurnal internasional kayak Pak Toto ini udah ahli banget ini sama jurnal. Terus yang kedua ini tadi Bu Popi sempat bilang untuk teman-teman yang lagi dapat tugas jurnal ini ya, dan ternyata alhamdulillah beberapa orang itu beberapa mahasiswa minta bimbingan ke saya gitu ya. Sedangkan mereka ini tugasnya adalah membuat jurnal tanpa proses skripsi gitu ya. Nah, banyak pertanyaan ini dari teman-teman, apakah mungkin jurnal itu dibuat tanpa penelitian yang yang seperti skripsi gitu, misalnya dalam waktu yang sekian bulan atau yang seperti apa gitu. Terus banyak yang juga minta tipsnya ini Pak Toto. Jika kalau mau buat jurnal dengan waktu yang agak cepat gitu daripada membuat skripsi seperti itu kira-kira penelitian yang seperti apa yang memang nyambung di kajian ilmu komunikasi. Mungkin itu dari saya, Bu Popi dan Abah. Mohon bantuannya ya, Pak. Bentar lagi kuliah nih, Pak.
Oh iya, siap. Oke.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Fira. Mungkin Pak Toto bisa disampaikan pencerahannya buat hati-hati yang galau ini.
Bisa sebenarnya mahasiswa nggak nulis skripsi, tapi kalau punya di peraturan yang ada di Umsida itu kalau misalnya nggak nulis skripsi tapi punya karya ilmiah yang dipublish di jurnal internasional atau mungkin jurnal Sinta, bisa sebenarnya. Apa yang dilakukan adalah review buku, ya, review buku. Nah, carikan buku yang misalnya buku-buku yang textbook, kemudian direview. Setelah direview, kemudian ditulis dan dipublikasikan di jurnal internasional. Dan itu setahu saya ada beberapa jurnal internasional yang menerima review buku, ada ya. Atau mungkin yang paling gampang itu penelitian dalam waktu yang sangat cepat itu adalah penelitian yang terkait dengan penelitian yang kualitatif gitu ya, penelitian kualitatif yang di media sosial itu cepat gitu. Itu terkait dengan misalnya menggunakan analisis yang kemarin kita latihan itu ya itu cepat sekali itu ya. Bagaimana dalam waktu 1 minggu bisa menghasilkan 1 bulan bisa selesai untuk penelitiannya. Saya pikir seperti itu. Jadi kalau misalnya mahasiswa ingin tidak melakukan penelitian dan itu kalau misalnya diterima ya tidak melakukan skripsi begitu, kan review buku bisa ya, review buku apa begitu ya, yang terkait misalnya yang textbook gitu, bagaimana pemikiran misalnya pemikiran Nurholis Majid atau pemikiran tentang Nurholis Majid tentang Islam gitu ya, boleh saja itu ya. Malah seperti direview kemudian dipublikasikan ya. Kalau diterima, sudah selesai dah, nggak usah nulis skripsi. Tapi memang butuh waktu, butuh diskusi banyak seperti begitu ya, bisa itu. Saya pikir kenapa fasilitas yang ada, aturan-aturan yang ada itu yang disampaikan itu kalau itu memungkinkan ya harus kita ambil. Jadi tidak harus judul-judul yang kaku ya dalam tradisi kuantitatif gitu ya, seperti yang kita bagi di semester 7 atau apa begitu ya. Jadi kalau misalnya di semester 6 gitu ya, mahasiswa ingin mereview buku kemudian mempublikasikan, dan tentu itu publikasinya harus dipandu oleh dibimbing oleh dosen gitu ya. Nah, kalau misalnya berhasil dipublikasikan malah lebih bagus itu. Tidak usah nunggu skripsi, yang penting punya jurnal internasional ya. Itu ya sudah bagus. Masalahnya sekarang itu kan duit. Kalau jurnal internasional itu kan mahal ya. Nah, masalahnya kalau kemudian publikasi di jurnal internasional, kemudian kalau mahasiswanya mau bayar, ya murah-murahnya itu kan ya, minimal kan $250 sampai $350 atau euro. Nah, itu kalau dikurskan 350 ya sekitar, atau 400 itu ya sekitar 7 jutaan. Itu. Tapi kalau dibandingkan dengan nulis skripsi, itu kan juga butuh waktu, kemudian juga butuh biaya, dan itu untuk nulis skripsi ya juga tidak cepat begitu ya, ditolak sana ditolak sini begitu, kadang-kadang seperti itu. Oleh karenanya untuk membebaskan mahasiswa dari skripsi ya caranya seperti itu. caranya. Ini kan konteksnya kan konteks sudah merdeka belajar gitu ya. Saya pikir begitu Bu Wira.
Baik,
Mungkin
terima
ada
kasih.
sanggahan Bu Wira.
Enggak Pak, jadi mungkin dari teman-teman yang sekarang ikut di webinar ini sudah bisa tercerahkan ya. Jadi ada jalan keluar bagi untuk teman-teman yang takut sama skripsi. Terima kasih Pak Toto, itu sangat mencerahkan sekali kalau memang review buku itu ternyata bisa dijadikan jurnal. Ini mungkin bisa dipertimbangkan oleh mahasiswa kita. Oke, terima kasih Pak Toto, sehat selalu.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Vira atas pertanyaannya, juga Pak Toto yang sudah memberikan pencerahan bagaimana caranya sebenarnya kita bisa mempublish tulisan tanpa harus repot untuk penelitian yang panjang, kurang lebihnya seperti itu. Okay, I think now we're already at the end of our discussion in this second session. Thank you for all the keynote speaker, Dr. Toto Wahyu Abadi and also Professor Paniza Almark. Maybe if I want to sum up a little bit about our discussion in our second session, as we know, though now there are about 5 paradigms in research, we can say, namely positivistic social sciences, interpretive social sciences, critical social sciences, and the latest one is feminism and social research, and also postmodern and social research. And now, if before we always debating between should we do it better in qualitative or in quantitative, now we have the middleman way where we can do in mixed method research. And also Dr. Toto Wahyu Abadi also give a little bit tips about how to publish our research by doing some kind of book review, and also maybe we can do a theoretical review to publish in a Sinta journal. I think that will be enough. So I think I would like to say thank you to all the participants who are still with us. Don't forget to fill the 3 forms, and maybe before we end the session, we can do a group picture. Maybe all the participants can open their video so we can take a group picture. Silakan buat para partisipan untuk membuka kameranya. Kita akan screenshot untuk dokumentasi. Oke. Ya, kameranya dipaskan dulu. Pastikan kumisnya sudah ada di tengah, center Pak Kukuh. Oke. Imro Siti, silakan. Oke, panitia mungkin bisa dibantu untuk screenshot. Ini ada 9 slide. Oke, for the first slide, smile. Oke, now second slide. Silakan dibuka kameranya. Oke. Terima. The third one. Okay, and next slide. Okay, thank you. I think that's all for now. Thank you. I will give back to MC. Saya tutup dengan Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Baik, terima kasih bagi para pemateri yang telah menyampaikan materi pada hari ini dan juga Ibu Poppy Febriana yang telah membawakan acara dengan baik. Tak lupa juga terima kasih kepada para peserta yang telah hadir pada siang ini dan jangan lupa untuk absen di link yang sudah diberikan oleh panitia pada kolom chat. Saya Erika selaku MC undur diri. Semoga bertemu pada agenda selanjutnya. Thank you so much for coming. Don't forget to stay healthy. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Recording stopped.
Berkembang dengan sangat pesatnya, Sidoarjo menjadi kabupaten rujukan UMKM terbaik di Indonesia. Lalu lalang dan laju masyarakat tak pernah terhenti di sepanjang waktu, mulai dari lini ekonomi, transportasi, budaya, hingga pendidikan tinggi. Dari daerah urban penopang ibu kota provinsi terbesar kedua di Indonesia, Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo melahirkan para cendekiawan muda yang mandiri dan penuh inovasi. Berdiri sejak tahun 1984, berawal dari tergabungnya beberapa sekolah tinggi Muhammadiyah, UMSIDA berkomitmen menjadi perguruan tinggi yang unggul dan inovatif dalam pengembangan ilmu pengetahuan, teknologi, dan seni berdasarkan nilai-nilai Islam untuk kesejahteraan masyarakat. Dari komitmen itu, kami mengedepankan kreativitas dan terus meningkatkan hasanah keilmuan melalui pendidikan dan pengajaran. UMSIDA tak hanya sebagai tempat menuntut ilmu, namun juga tempat bertemunya ribuan cendekiawan dari seluruh Indonesia, bahkan dunia, untuk bertukar pikiran. Kami saling terhubung dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi dan institusi di dunia, mencetuskan gagasan melalui idealisme para akademisi. Semua itu kami dedikasikan untuk Indonesia sejahtera dan berkemajuan yang berdaya saing global. Kami bahu-membahu menghasilkan ribuan produk unggulan melalui penelitian dan pengabdian. Dinamika kehidupan kampus ini membuat kami mengerti arti perjuangan.
UMSIDA akan menjadi perguruan tinggi unggul, inovatif dalam pengembangan ipteks berdasarkan nilai-nilai Islam untuk kesejahteraan masyarakat. Di visi 2038 ini, UMSIDA akan diantarkan untuk menjadi perguruan tinggi yang mendapatkan pengakuan di tingkat ASEAN Recognition. Yang itu meniscayakan ada banyak persiapan yang harus kita lakukan. Dalam tahap ini, pada tahun pertama kita akan melakukan penguatan pada sisi tata kelola. Maka di situ kita akan memperkuat pendidikan dan pengajaran, penelitian, pengabdian masyarakat, dan sekaligus penguatan nilai-nilai al-Islam dan kemuhammadiyahan. Maka dalam kaitan ini, tugas kami adalah untuk menyiapkan sumber daya manusia, baik dosen maupun tenaga kependidikan, yang profesional, berkompeten di bidangnya, sehingga mereka semua bisa memberikan pelayanan terbaik bagi seluruh sivitas akademika, terutama para mahasiswa. Maka tahapan berikutnya kemudian kita ingin mempercepat capaian national recognition. Pengakuan di tingkat nasional ini yang ditandai dengan berbagai capaian nantinya. Secara institusi kita akan mengarahkan UMSIDA ini terakreditasi unggul, disusul dengan capaian-capaian yang lain, sehingga pada saatnya nanti kita siap untuk bersanding, berkompetisi dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi besar di Indonesia ini. Mudah-mudahan kita semua punya semangat yang sama di dalam mencapai visi besar UMSIDA 2038 nanti, sehingga kita bersama akan menyaksikan kehadiran UMSIDA mendapat pengakuan bukan hanya pada sisi kelembagaan, tapi dosen, tenaga kependidikan, sistem pembelajaran, kultur akademik yang terbangun di UMSIDA ini, itu sejajar dengan berbagai perguruan tinggi besar di tingkat ASEAN.
Berbekal nilai-nilai Islam, berserah diri pada Sang Pemilik kehidupan, kami yakin untuk melangkah, melihat ke depan, dunia ada di dalam genggaman. Dari sini perjalananmu dimulai, dari sini pencerahan bersemi. Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Program studi akuntansi Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo mencetak mahasiswa sebagai seorang akuntan yang handal, profesional, dan Islami. Banyak sekali muatan yang akan diperoleh mahasiswa selama menempuh masa studi di program studi akuntansi Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo dalam konteks akuntansi keuangan dan auditing yang didukung dengan laboratorium yang disesuaikan dengan perkembangan ilmu pengetahuan dan teknologi. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya dengan teman-teman di Prodi Ilmu Hukum FBHIS yang dulunya bernama Fakultas Hukum, dengan ini ingin menyampaikan salah satu keunggulan jika teman-teman atau masyarakat bergabung dengan Prodi kami memiliki visi untuk menjadi Prodi yang terdepan dalam pengembangan atau dalam pencetakan profesional hukum bisnis di tingkat nasional pada tahun 2020. Dan kami di program studi ilmu hukum patut berbangga bahwa dari 6 dosen kami, 4 di antara kami sudah tersertifikasi dan 2 sedang menuju proses sertifikasi. Untuk karakteristik mahasiswa yang islami, alhamdulillah di prodi kami 99% mahasiswa kami sudah berkarakteristik islami, dapat ditemui dengan tidak adanya mahasiswa yang tidak berjilbab di prodi kami. Salah satu misi dari Prodi Ilmu Hukum di FBHIS pada saat ini adalah untuk mencetak sarjana yang kompeten di tingkat nasional. Salah satu penunjangnya adalah melalui praktikum peradilan semu dan melalui praktikum atau melalui lab kontrak. Di praktek peradilan semu, teman-teman akan diperkenalkan dengan banyak hukum acara, antara lain hukum acara perdata, hukum acara pidana, dan hukum acara tata usaha negara, sehingga mereka bisa menjadi praktisi yang handal suatu saat nanti. Baik, jika ingin bergabung dengan kami tunggu di Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo. Bangga Umsida.